Yeah, go on. Yeah, on anything.
So I was stopped today by some people who were evangelising to me after church, and they were talking about why we should go to church on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And then they were choosing verses like this is the seventh day and so on and so forth. Would you be able to explain that, why that's either erroneous or whatever?
Yeah. It's basically it's a seventh Adventist teaching, and I think your question is about to be interrupted. Just to let you know. Oh, thank you. I don't have space for it in my bag. I'm sorry. So could you do me a favour until I've got a time to collect it from you? Thank you. So it's a Seventh Adventist day teaching. In the Old Testament, it's very clear that you've got the Sabbath, and the Sabbath is on the seventh day, and that is the day of rest. And Seventh-day Adventists have taken this teaching and built an idea upon it that actually contradicts the teachings of Paul. So let me just go to Romans. Bear with us. Right. So in Romans chapter 14 it says this. It says, "Who are you to judge the servant of another? To his own master he stands or falls, and he will stand for the Lord or be able to make him stand. One person regards one day above another, another regards every day alike. Each person must be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it for the Lord, and he who eats does so for the Lord, for he gives thanks to God, and he who eats not for the Lord, he does not eat and gives thanks to God." This is called the doctrine of the freedom of the gospel. And that means that every Christian, in matters of food and special days of obligation, is completely free to either eat or not eat, to either celebrate or not celebrate any particular day or any particular food. This is what Paul is teaching. And that means that when Seventh-day Adventists say that every Christian is committing a sin who honours the Sunday as a Sabbath, they are in error. But it's not an error that means they're not a Christian, it just means that they're a Christian with an error. The reality is Christians are free. And in the early church, when the Gentile church that had no Jewish culture became the dominant church, it started to observe the day of the resurrection like a Sabbath. And so the Sunday became a Sabbath, and that has passed into our culture, and Gentile Christians think of the Sunday as a Sabbath. And there's no problem with that if you want to, but you don't have to. It's one of the things that the Reformation rediscovered, is the idea that you don't have to keep the Sunday as a Sabbath. But I want to give you some good reasons why you should keep the Sunday as a Sabbath. Firstly, all human beings need to rest. It's important that we rest. We shouldn't be slaves to market economies, and we shouldn't be slaves to our jobs. And keeping a Sabbath is one of the demonstrations that you are not a people under bondage. And in Scripture, it is said that where the Spirit is, there is freedom. And that we are not a people born to bondage. And the Sabbath and keeping a Sabbath is one of the ways of demonstrating that we are free. Because we lay down on the Sabbath all other concerns except the concern for God, showing that we are only bonded to God in covenant, and we are not bonded to any false god like money. Secondly, there is a social good for keeping a Sabbath. If we in this country have one day where everybody lays down their work, then that is one day you can go and see your friends, you can go and see your family, and we can use that day to renew the bonds of human fellowship. We can use that day as a way of building up community and social cohesion and strengthening our families and our friendships. And so it makes sense as a social good to give everybody the same day off, ladies and gentlemen. And because this is a Christian country, and because the tradition of the church has been Sunday, I think that Sunday, as a way of honouring our past and the traditions of the church, should be the day. But it doesn't have to be Sunday. It could be Saturday. And there is a biblical argument for making it a Saturday. And here's the biblical argument. Firstly, clearly, the Seventh-day Adventists are a people of weak conscience. They are scandalized by the idea of a Sunday Sabbath. But if you agree with my arguments, you would not be scandalized by a Saturday Sabbath. Secondly, a Saturday Sabbath more directly emulates the patterns of the Old Covenant, though we are not obliged to keep the idea of the Saturday Sabbath. And so you could have Saturday as a Sabbath and still celebrate the resurrection on a Sunday. These two things are not opposed to one another. Any questions on the Sabbath or what I've said about the Sabbath? Going once, going twice, gone. There is no reason, good point. There is no reason why we couldn't have two Sabbaths. Because remember, in the freedom of the gospel, you are free to honour any day unto the Lord. And so there is nothing to stop us having Saturday and Sunday as a Sabbath. So why not? Why not do both? And literally, that's what we're doing anyway. Saturdays and Sundays are days off. So enjoy them as Sabbaths. Give them to the Lord. And let's put down servile work. This freedom of the gospel is why America has Thanksgiving Day. Because the Puritans set aside a particular day to give thanks to the Lord that they survived the winter. I don't understand how it ends up being in autumn today, but there you go. Maybe there's something about the history I don't understand. But that's why America celebrates Thanksgiving Day, because America has been influenced, even though it is a secular republic, it has been influenced by its Christian founding fathers. That is why Christians celebrate Easter Sunday and Christmas Day and Ash Wednesday, because the church in the past set aside certain days to honour certain truths of the Christian faith. They were not borrowing from paganism. That is the spurious lies of the ignorant. And it is completely legitimate for Christians to do so. Any other questions on the question of the Sabbath? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Any other questions on the Sabbath or something else?
Oh, no, on the Sabbath.
Go on.
What does that mean in Hebrew, the word Sabbath?
Just means 7. 7th day.
So the last day.
Last day of the week. Any other questions on any topic about or from Christianity? Go on.
Can you explain, so Matthew 12:5 and the link between Hosea 11:1? No, 11:1.
Right, you're going to have to get Hosea 11:1. Right, Matthew 12:5 says this, or have you not read in the law, or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and are innocent? 5:12. Sorry, Matthew 5:12. Right, okay. Matthew 5:12. Matthew 5:12, rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Matthew 5, and you're going to read Hosea.
Sorry. Again, my apologies. I'm all over the place. Hosea 11:1, Matthew 2:15. I do apologize.
Okay, if you're wrong the third time, you'll have to go away and get your verses.
That's my last attempt.
Last attempt. Matthew 2 what?
2:15, and the link will be with Hosea 11:1.
Matthew 2:15. Matthew 2:15. He remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. Go read Hosea.
So Hosea 11:1 we say, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. But every time he went astray, he sacrificed to the gods.
Right. So the link between the Hosea reference and the Matthew reference is that Jesus, as the perfect Israelite, his life exemplified the meta story of what Israel should have been. Israel was the son that was called out of Egypt to be a holy nation, a royal priesthood, devoted to the Lord and high and holy God, and to be holy. And Israel failed to do that, as Hosea says, fell into sin again and again and again. But when Matthew points out that Jesus Christ was called out of Egypt, it is showing that Jesus is the perfect Israelite, was called out of Egypt like the Israelites, but unlike the Israelites who consistently worship the Baals, the false gods of the Canaanites and others. Jesus Christ himself was faithful to the one true God without ever falling into idolatry. And that was the reference that Matthew is making. He is showing that paradigmatically Jesus is living the life that Israel was called to live, showing that he was the perfect man. Any questions on that point? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Any other questions about any aspect of Christianity? You're reading what, sorry?
The book of Exodus in the Old Testament, and I trapped on the Exodus 21.
Yeah.
And I've read about God setting set of rules if you have another wife. And I was thinking, why did God not allow all prophets and throughout the Old Testament for people to have multiple wives?
Right. So that's the question. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do we as Christians do about the polygamy in the Old Testament? We interpret the Old Testament through the teachings of Jesus. Jesus doesn't actually in his teaching say much about the Old Testament, but he does say some things. And on the question of divorce, he said that Moses allowed you to give a certificate of divorce. But that was not how it was in the beginning. That in the beginning, that there should be 2 who become one flesh. So in the beginning, God created Adam and Eve. Not Adam, Eve, Isabella, Catherine and Sarah, ladies and gentlemen. And so, since polygamy is a deviation from what God created in the beginning, like murder was a deviation, like rebellion and spiritual death were deviations, polygamy was a sin. But just as God allowed divorce because of the hardness of their hearts, God also allowed polygamy because of the hardness of their hearts. But in the New Covenant, whenever the Bible talks about marriage, it understands marriage, as Ephesians 5 verses 20 onwards does, as being emblematic, symbolic of Christ's relationship to the church, as Christ's marriage to the church. How many wives does Jesus have? One. And if we are meant to imitate Christ, how many wives must we have? And that is why in the epistles it says, let the elders of the church be men of one wife. And that is why polygamy is seen as a sin. That means that we in this country should prosecute and punish every Muslim in a polygamous marriage. That we should prosecute and punish every bigamist who has more than one wife. We should define our laws according to the New Covenant, and we should punish all of those people that are abusing the welfare system that you pay for in your taxes, where they have more than one wife and the other wives are living on benefits, pretending to be a single woman whilst they are married in the mosque. And your taxes are paying for that benefit fraud. But the liberal progressives of this country are so weak-minded because of their blind ideological liberalism. They are literally turning a blind eye to welfare scamming and welfare fraud that is contributing to your tax bill. This needs to become an issue. Every mosque must legally be obliged to declare every marriage, and every marriage must be recognized by the state, and all polygamous marriages must be outlawed, and all those who participate in polygamy must be punished.
Yes.
Any other questions on polygamy?
It's a gift on Hadith.
Thank you very much. Could I get that too?
Yeah, I have a following question. So,
Wait, let someone else ask a question. On polygamy. Is it not on polygamy? Oh, sorry.
What about the guys that go from over here to another country as well? They should be punished as
Yes.
much as those.
And let's be clear, ladies and gentlemen. One of the things that is happening in this country is that Muslim men are fooling people into secret marriages. They're having one wife and then secretly not telling their first wife that they're sticking their poker into other fires, ladies and gentlemen. Other fires. Now let me explain why this is a problem. Let's imagine that the other fire happens to have certain faults with it, certain diseases, and then those diseases are transferred from one woman to the next. Doesn't that first woman have the right to know where her man is sticking his poker, ladies and gentlemen? The reality is that secret marriages that are practiced in Islam are basically just a code for adultery, ladies and gentlemen. It's no better than going to a nightclub and sleeping around with different women in the nightclub. Don't take lectures from Muslims about the moral decadence of the West when Islam legitimates adultery and secret marriages, which is basically just the same thing as sleeping around in a nightclub and committing adultery against your wife. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, that any man who commits adultery against his wife, regardless of his religion, should be punished by the state. And we need to impose punishments on unfaithful men, ladies and gentlemen.
I agree.
Any other questions on the topic of polygamy? Going once, going twice. We're talking about polygamy. Sorry, idiot over there is being rude.
So in regards to the prophets of the Old Testament,
Yep.
had polygamous relationships. How is that reconciled?
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen,
The question,
which prophet are you talking about?
David, Solomon,
Right.
Abraham.
So what do we do about prophets like David who had polygamous marriages?
yeah, Solomon.
Put your hand up if you're a Christian. Keep your hand up
Okay.
if you think David was sinless. There you go. That's why you've got to pay attention.
We are gone.
Ladies and gentlemen, nobody believes in Christianity that the prophets were sinless. That is a stupid Islamic idea that isn't even supported in their Quran. But, ladies and gentlemen, we Christians don't believe in Islamic nonsense. We believe that all the prophets were sinners and their polygamy was a sin permitted because of the hardness of their heart. Like divorce was permitted because of the hardness of their heart. Any other questions on polygamy? Go on.
Yes, sir. Why did he correct the prophets and told them to keep the monogamy?
Sorry?
Didn't God correct prophets and tell them that monogamy is the right way?
Right. So why didn't God correct the prophets?
Why?
Ladies and gentlemen, I've already said, because of the hardness of their hearts. In other words, even if God had said, do not practice monogamy, they would have still practiced polygamy. Like, for instance, when you read the Judges and the people of Israel said, give us a king, give us a king, give us a king. What did God say to them? He said to them, if I give you a king, it will end in disaster. He wanted them to be ruled by judges. But because of the hardness of their heart, he gave them kings to rule over them. God works with the hardness of people's hearts because God is a merciful God who desires that all should be saved. Any other questions on the issue of polygamy?
So you mentioned that they were sinners for having multiple wives.
Yeah.
He just explains, it's 2 Samuel 12:18, where God says to David that you were to Israel and Judah that you were given, God gave you these wives.
What does it say?
So I gave you your master's house to you and your master's wives and your wives.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, why then, given what I've just said, does God say in the scriptures that he gave David his wives? Did I not just say that God permitted polygamy because of the hardness of their heart? So if God permitted polygamy, he allowed David to have those wives. There is no contradiction in my argument and the scripture. If God permits it, he allowed it. If he allowed it, then that's why David has multiple wives, because God allowed David to succeed. Any other questions on polygamy? Sorry?
Only Christians. Only Christians. You can marry only Christians.
Whom should they marry? That's not the question of polygamy, sir. I want to settle on the question of polygamy by pointing this out. That when you look, ladies and gentlemen, at Muhammad and the understanding of marriage in Islam and compare it to Christianity, in every way, the Christian concept of marriage is superior to the Islamic concept of marriage. In Islam, you can cheat and lie to your wife. In Christianity, you can't. In Islam, you can marry children. In Christianity, you can't. In Islam, you can physically abuse your wife on the suspicion of marriage. In Christianity, you can't. In Islam, the relationship between man and woman is not equal in terms of how many people you can marry and what are the reasons for polygamy. So, for instance, if a man, according to Islamic fiqh, goes to another country and he can't keep it in his pants, he's allowed to have a misyar marriage. But the woman has to control her loins, ladies and gentlemen. She's not allowed the excuse, but the man is allowed. But in Christianity, both men and women must be equally faithful. So let me ask you this, women. Let me ask you this, Muslimas. Which religion is offering you the best deal? Islam or Christianity? Let me hear you, sisters. You Christian sisters. Which religion is offering you the best deal? Islam or Christianity? Any other questions on any topic connected to the Christian faith? Connected to the Christian faith? Okay.
The men are allowed to do so, but you just bring them.
But it's a question about the Christian faith, sister. Any questions about the Christian faith, ladies and gentlemen? If you frame the question connected to Christianity, I can come back on it. Going once.
What about your king in England? What about your king in England?
What about the king in England?
How many women he had?
Ladies and gentlemen, great question. Great question. King Charles committed adultery on his wife. I believe that King Charles should have, but when King Charles married Camilla, there was a penitential moment in that marriage where he admitted his wrong and Camilla admitted her wrong. And because both of them repented of their adultery, and the sincerity of their repentance is known to God, not to me, they were free to marry in the eyes of the church. Because Diana was dead and they had repented of their adultery. But, ladies and gentlemen, since we're talking about kings, I don't believe that King Charles should have sworn to be the defender of the faith. And here is why. Because that oath is taken before God. And in the Christian faith, oaths are a central spiritual practice of the Christian life. Christians take oaths for all kinds of reasons. Marriages, priesthood, monasticism, evangelism, business. Oath taking is something that we do in our courts. It's a Christian practice that we do all the time. But when you take an oath, you should mean it and you should do it. But the monarchies of this country take an oath knowing full well that they cannot defend the faith constitutionally.
They can't.
And so their options are these. They must either cause a constitutional crisis by refusing to give royal assent to unchristian laws, or they should say that I cannot keep this oath and abdicate and refuse to take the oath at the next ascension of king or queen. Any other question on the constitutional monarchy of England, since it is a Christian theocracy? Go on.
Just like, what do you think about the head of the Church of England starting to celebrate Ramadan and having certain Islamic things done at Windsor
Yep.
Castle and places like that, for example?
Yep. So, ladies and gentlemen, in Corinthians it says that we as Christians should not be unevenly yoked with the unbeliever. And it is talking about worship, ladies and gentlemen. I want to be clear. If you are a Christian, you are forbidden by apostolic teaching to participate in the religious festivals of other religions. You simply cannot do it. And so when the king participates in other religious practices, like iftar meals, he is breaking the apostolic instruction and demonstrating that he is not a defender of the faith. This has implications for all of you as well. That means as Christians, you cannot participate in your workplaces with pride or Pride Festival, because that is a festival of the religion of humanity and the religion of self. And we are not worshippers of humanity, and we are not worshippers of self. And so we must refuse, ladies and gentlemen, to participate on the grounds of religion. If necessary, lose your job, because it is better to lose your job than to compromise on your religion. But furthermore, it means that we as Christians must understand what is our faith. And we must raise our children to understand that they must refuse to participate in the salat if they are taken to a mosque. They must say, I cannot do this. And we must instill in our children the confidence to say no to participation in multicultural ideology and multicultural practices. This will eventually necessitate that we as Christians consolidate our community and establish our own separate educational system where our children will not be abused by the ideologues of liberalism or brainwashed by left-wing militant teachers who despise the Christian faith. The formation of children does not happen in Sunday school. The formation of children happens at home by their parents. And so it is important for you to know your faith. So whatever tradition you believe in, buy yourself a catechism of that tradition, learn it and teach it. Whatever tradition you are in, learn the calendar of your church and practice it. Learn the Bible from the scholars of your tradition and teach it to your children, but know it first for yourself. Any other questions on formation? Going once. Going twice. Going 3 times. Any, go on.
Yeah, you mentioned that Christians can't celebrate other traditions of religion.
Yes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the verse is this. Is it 1 Corinthians 3? Can you help me find, Sister Benita? Can you help me find the passage where it says, don't, unequally yoked. Just to speed this up.
It's Corinthians 6:14.
1 Corinthians 2.
2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians 4:16. Right, bro. You asked the question. It's in 2 Corinthians 6:14. 2 Corinthians 6:14, and it says this. Are you listening? Yeah? It says, do not be bound together with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness and lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? Or what harmony has Christ with Belial? Or what has a believer in common with an unbeliever? Or what agreement has the temple of God with idols? For we are the temple of the living God, just as God said, I will dwell in them and walk amongst them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Therefore, come out from their midst and be separate. Any vicar, any priest of the Church of England or any other religion or any other church that teaches that we as Christians are worshipping the same God as Muslims, Buddhists, Jews, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Sikhs, is contradicting the Christian faith. And any religious leader who participates in the worship of other gods or allows the worship of other gods in our churches has themselves committed a grave sin and should be condemned for that grave sin. And sadly, this is something that the Roman Catholic Church needs to repent of, and the Church of England, and the Lutheran Church, because these practices are rampant in those churches. Any other question about spiritual syncretism? Going once. on spiritual syncretism.
How do I word this properly? Do you believe that believing in God is purely a Christian thing, or you can believe in God without associating yourself with, say, the Catholic Church?
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, is the belief in God a Christian thing? No, obviously not. Many religions believe in a God, and many religions believe in more than one God. However, the question is, what God do they believe in? And when you look at the God of Islam, or the God of Mormonism, or the God of Sikhism, and you compare it to the Christian God, they are not the same. And thus, ladies and gentlemen, it's the difference between a chicken egg and a lizard egg. They're both eggs, and you can call them eggs, but what comes out of them is entirely different. Just because someone says they believe in God doesn't mean they believe in the mother church, the mother hen that wishes to gather Jerusalem under her wings. Some of them believe in eggs that give birth to snakes that tempt Adam and Eve to fall away from God because they are filled with the lies of demons. Any other question on spiritual syncretism?
It's not exactly what
No, let someone else ask a question first. Any other question on spiritual syncretism?
Define syncretism.
Great question. What is spiritual syncretism? Spiritual syncretism is when you take non-Christian beliefs and you bind them together with Christian beliefs. In every generation, in every context, in every culture, that is always a danger. And every generation of the church has done that, ladies and gentlemen. Many of our traditions from the past are syncretized with Roman religion. We took over their temples, their use of candles, and so on. For example, in the modern world, lots of churches have syncretized their religion with liberalism or aspects of liberalism. Lots of churches syncretize Christianity with nationalism. That's syncretism. Lots of religion, the prosperity gospel is an example of syncretism and consumerism. For example, syncretism is always a danger. And so we must always judge the culture that we are in by the values of the Christian faith. And what can be reformed and used as Christians should be reformed and used as Christians, by Christians. But that which is incompatible with the Christian faith, like allegiance to the nation state above allegiance to the ecumenical, one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, should be replaced by Christian teaching. And that is what we mean by syncretism. Any other questions on syncretism? On syncretism.
The Anglican Church
Yes.
is the Church of England.
Yes.
Is that syncretism?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Anglican Church, the Church of England, is an example of syncretism par excellence. The Church of England was created to serve the English establishment in the time of Henry VIII and his successors. And the English church, the Anglican church, the Church of England, has been a prostitute lying on its back and being screwed by the English establishment year on year, every year, from the time of Henry VIII up until the present time. Now when, ladies and gentlemen, the English establishment was broadly Christian, that wasn't so bad. But right now, the English establishment are made up of atheists, agnostics, and anti-Christian bigots. And the Church of England, like the whore that she is still lying on her back and being screwed by the English establishment because she doesn't serve Jesus as her Lord. She serves the English establishment as her Lord. And if you're a Christian that loves Christianity in this country, you should call this whore to repentance and call her to, like Mary the Egyptian, who was a whore in Egypt, who became a famous spiritual nun of the church. You should call the Church of England to be faithful to her Lord and oppose the English establishment. Any other questions on the Church of England?
Condemning both the Church of England and say the larger Catholic Church, what makes you think that people are going to be attracted to being a Christian when they have such kind of questionable?
So, ladies and gentlemen, condemning the weaknesses in our churches is the responsibility of all of us. I am a communicant of the Church of England. So if I'm going to criticise any church, I'm not going to criticise Roman Catholics or Orthodox or Copts. I'm going to criticise the Church of England. And you should criticise whatever church you belong to. Fix the problems in your own church before you point out the problems in someone else's churches. And all of our churches have weaknesses. Do you know why? Because all of us as Christians have weaknesses. If you're a Christian, put your hand up. Keep your hand up if you also sin. There you go. So why wouldn't we expect sin to be in our churches? But just as we strive to make ourselves better, so we should strive to make our churches better. And so we should stand up to failings in our own churches without wasting our time pointing at others. Because Jesus said, remove the plank from your own eye before you remove the speck of dust from someone else. And to answer your question directly, my inbox is proof that simply criticising weaknesses in the church does not put people off becoming Christian. My inbox is full of people becoming Christian. From atheist backgrounds, agnostic backgrounds, Jehovah's Witness backgrounds, and Muslim backgrounds, ladies and gentlemen. Because what people are drawn to is a Christianity that is serious and that stands up for itself, that has a clear sense of its own identity. When our churches embody that, people will return to the church, ladies and gentlemen. Any other questions on evangelism? Going once?
What is good evangelism? What is bad evangelism?
So, ladies and gentlemen, the question is, what is good evangelism and what is bad evangelism? So let me give you what I would say is an example of bad evangelism. Standing on a street corner with a microphone, and shouting at people, telling them that they're all sinners, that Christ is died for their sins, and that there's going to be a judgment in which they either can go to heaven or go to hell. That is an example of bad evangelism. Let me explain why. Is it because it's telling a lie? No. But because we live in a consumer culture in which people expect to be engaged as equals. They expect to be heard. Now I am aware of the irony, because here I am shouting at people, but this is Speaker's Corner. You've come here to listen to people speak. But is that what you expect when you go onto the high street? No. You're going about your business, meeting your friends, going shopping, going to the cinema, or whatever else. Going to see your grandmother. You're not going there because you're expecting someone to start shouting at you. Also, ladies and gentlemen, the questions that I get asked in this park, and Billy was a perfect example. Did he ask about sin? Did he ask about Christ's crucifixion as salvation, or judgment, or heaven and hell? No. He asked about the soul. He asked about the Bible. He asked about other matters. If we are going to be good evangelists, we should make the effort to listen to what are the concerns and the questions that are on people's minds. And we should know enough about our faith to address their question, their concern, based upon our knowledge of Christianity. And that is what good evangelism looks like. So don't go on to street corners shouting at people. Set up a table, have books that cover all kinds of topics, and then talk to people. Treat them with respect. Engage them in conversation. I'll give you a working example. I went to support a Sri Lankan church in Manchester. They had been doing evangelism of the worst kind that I aforementioned for 21 years. And they never in 21 years saw someone become a Christian. And they said to me, come up and support us in evangelism. We're being harassed by Muslims. So I said I would, on condition that they would only do evangelism as I prescribed. And they agreed. And in 4 hours of evangelism, one person became a Christian. 4 people said that they wanted to go to church the following Sunday, and 4 people asked for follow-up, and 72 people were engaged in spiritual conversations. So you tell me, is wisdom proved by her children? And if wisdom is proved by her children, then hasn't my form of evangelism demonstrated that it works consistently? And isn't it time that the evangelists of this country recognized that I am right, and that being dogmatic about preaching at people and singing at people is the wrong way to do evangelism? If you don't believe me, try it for yourself. Any other questions on evangelism?
Love you, Bob. It's not a question, but
Love you too, bro. I'm so sorry, say again?
How would you begin, like, in terms of reading or finding information, starting evangelism?
So he's asking me what reading should we start in our evangelism. The brother has not understood my methodology. My methodology is not about you starting the evangelism. My methodology is about you listening to the other person and listening to what their concerns are and what their question is. And then knowing enough about your faith that you go to the reading that is appropriate to their issue or question. So your very question means that you haven't understood the methodology that I'm teaching. Any other question on any aspect of evangelism? No. No. The methodology that I have said to you cannot be prescribed. It isn't formulaic. You must be, as an evangelist, a deep scholar of the faith, and then you must listen to what they want to talk about. So stop with your formulas. Stop with your formulaics. Know your faith deep enough and broad enough that you can talk about nearly any question. And if you can't, then you simply say to the person, hey, great question. I don't know. Let's exchange numbers. Let me take you out for a coffee. I'll go away and do the research and I'll come back with the answer. Go on. On evangelism.
How do you do relational evangelism when they're interested, but at the heart of it they're just trying to like cancel you or trap you? So for example, if you're like in the workplace with like queer people, for example,
Yep.
just trying to cancel. What if there's like a risk?
Right, ladies and gentlemen. So how do we do relationship evangelism in the workplace where there are dangers of people who want to entrap us? It is simply about using your wisdom. I've been in the workplace where gay militants have tried to entrap me in questions. And they've gone, you're a Christian, what do you think about homosexuality? Or what do you think about gay marriage? Obviously, as a Christian, I don't believe in gay marriage. But I'm not stupid either. I don't foolishly answer questions in the workplace in an unwise way. So what I say to them is something like this. That's a great question, Helen. But unfortunately, we live in the United Kingdom where I don't have freedom of speech. And whilst I would love to answer the question, I'm afraid that I can't, because if I do, I might be punished. Now, I'll ask you, what do you think Helen will infer from the answer? That I'm a bigot, right? But I have not gone along with the liberal lifestyle. I would then say to her something like this. What I advise you to do is go to the Vatican website or the catechism of such and such a church and read it for yourself and come to your own conclusion. That's all I can say right now. And then, ladies and gentlemen, if she puts in a complaint, I can say to her that I never said it was wrong. I never said it was bad. I just said I can't answer the question, and I gave her a reference where she could research the answer for herself.
That's wise, that's wise.
Don't you think we should just say and forget, who cares if you get fired?
Right, ladies and gentlemen. The answer is, so don't you think we should just say and not care if you get fired? It really depends on your circumstances. If you're a mother who's on living wage and you're looking after children and they're dependent upon your wage for an income, you've got to act wisely. And so it is not always wise just to charge in there like a bull in a china shop and give the answer if you're going to lose your job. There are some things that you should lose your job for, but this is not one of those questions. There are some things that you should lose your job for. If our employers ever said to us, you must deny Jesus or be sacked, sack me. Sack me now. I'll go out the door dancing and cheering. But you don't have to die as a Christian on every hill. And on something that's pastoral, like questions around homosexuality, we have an affordability to be wise. The only questions that we need to die on a hill for are literally questions of life and death. Like if they compel Christian doctors to carry out abortion or euthanasia, Christians need to be sacked rather than do that. Or if we're told to deny our faith in Jesus, Christians should be sacked before we die on that hill. But, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to die on every hill, and your circumstances might mean that you shouldn't, because your duty of love requires that you work out your faith in love. Because that's what it says in Scripture. Work out your faith in love. And there is an order to love. If you can afford to lose your job because you can afford to make a stand, then do so. But if you can't afford to, then don't. It depends on your circumstances and the application of wisdom or love. Let someone else ask a question. Any other questions on the application of faith and love in the workplace? Faith and love in the workplace.
What protections do we have? Because there should be, surely there's some like freedom of thought around religious protection as well.
Yeah.
I know there's in America, but is there any in the UK that protects from some of this?
So that, ladies and gentlemen,
Sorry to interrupt. But
I'm sorry, I'm just answering his question.
You're a warlock, aren't
Don't be rude. Now I'm not going to take any questions from you. Right. So in answer to his question, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Legal protection.
Oh, legal protections, yeah. The British Constitution has adopted the Human Rights Charter in toto. That Human Rights Charter under clause, I think it's 9, grants you protection under religious freedom. But the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, when this is being tested in the court, we're seeing again and again that the commitment of the liberal progressives who control our courts to this charter is at best flaccid and limp-wristed. It is soy. And the reality is Christians are not well protected under the law. Furthermore, with the passing of the Communications Act, which came into effect this week, and the future proposal of the Islamophobia law that may very well become law, freedom of speech in this country is essentially, to all intents and purposes, dead. All of you need now to accept that reality. Freedom of speech in this country is dead. Deal with it, because we allowed it to happen on our watch. But if we want to give a better world to our children, we must organise in every possible way to win back the freedoms that the Labour tyranny and the progressive tyrants are trying to take away from us. And we must win back our freedoms, like the freedom of speech, ladies and gentlemen. Any other questions on the freedom of speech and Christianity?
When would you say freedom of speech died?
Literally this year. Any other questions of free speech and Christianity?
Why did it die?
Let someone else ask a question. Right. How can we organise as Christians? Get political. Anyone who teaches you that Christianity and politics doesn't mix, or that Christianity doesn't have a political agenda, if they are a Christian, they are simply wrong. They may still be a Christian. This is not one of those issues that decides whether you're a Christian, but anyone who tells you that Christianity is not political or does not have a political agenda simply doesn't understand the Bible properly. They are wrong. I'm dealing with your first question. Therefore, as Christians, we should organise politically. Get behind Christian political parties like the Christian People's Alliance, who at this moment is badly led by Sid Cordell, a man who has run out of steam, run out of ideas, and can't advance the party anymore. But that party is moribund because too many Christians are joining the Reform Party or the Labour Party or the Conservative Party than actually getting behind a Christian political movement. We've already seen, ladies and gentlemen, that Muslim militants and progressive militants are elected to Parliament to stand up for their ideologies. But how many MPs are in Parliament defending Christianity?
None.
I know of one, maybe two, possibly 3 or 4. But the reality is, we would have more MPs in Parliament if we did 2 things. 1, we consolidated behind overtly Christian political parties. And 2, we consolidated the Christian community geographically by constituency and all moved into the same areas so that we became the dominant demographic, and then our voice would be heard. Any other questions on Christianity and democracy?
I was going to ask you, so as Christians...
On Christianity and democracy, go on.
So as Christians, the problem is it's just a religious identity. Anyone can be Christian. Whereas some English people here, they're not Christian, they don't identify with Christianity, and their heritage is probably like pagan. So you're demonizing them by saying everyone should just...
Ask your mate Tommy Robinson.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
From Israel,
I'll wait until he's shut up and then I'll answer your question. Just going to wait until the heckler's done and then I'll answer the brother's question.
Yeah, because you only answer the questions you want to answer. You would never answer a good question. Right? I've asked him before, he don't want to talk to me. He knows he's in the
And this is why I don't talk to him. He's demonstrating why I don't talk to him.
You've spoken at Tommy Robinson's meetings, and he's an agent of Israel. And everybody knows that now. It's all over the internet. You know, and you're probably getting money from Israel as well. Yes! It's true. I've been in the park 70 years. You can tell people like him straight away. I've mentioned all the different people you get in speaker schools.
Yawn!
Dodgy character.
Yawn!
Tommy Robinson.
Yawn!
Dodgy.
Yawn! Yawn!
He's trying to make us into
Yawn! Join in when you like. Yawn! 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 You're crap support, guys, honestly. Are you done?
Alright, mate. Thank you.
Right. in answer to your question, the premise of the question is that if we establish a Christian state, we demonize non-Christians. That's funny, because I know in the Quran that Christians are demonized. They are called the worst of creatures according to the Quran. And under Sharia law, Christians are abused by terms like kafar and mushrik. These religiously inciting terms are derogatory against Christians. And in an Islamic caliphate, Christians will be made second-class citizens. And so I will not take lectures about demonization from Muslims that believe in a book that demonizes Christians and who subjugates Christians in a religious apartheid. But, ladies and gentlemen, let me correct the brother because he's wrong. Under Christian law, everyone, no matter their religion, would be said to be made in the image of God. This brother is made in the image of God, and he would be treated equally under Christian law as I am. If I broke Christian law, the punishment that I receive would be identical to the punishment that he would receive. And so there would be equality under the law. But in the apartheid system of Islam, if me and him broke the same law, depending on who we broke it against, whether the victim was a Muslim or a Christian, and the perpetrator was a Muslim or a Christian, we would receive different punishments. And his punishment would be less harsh than the one given to me, ladies and gentlemen. That is the very definition of apartheid, ladies and gentlemen. So never take a lecture from a Muslim about the idea of the superiority of Islamic law over Western law, because they're bad car salesmen looking for the ignorant to fool. Any other questions on the contrast between Sharia law and Christian law, ladies and gentlemen? No, I'm taking questions. Let me take a question from someone else and then I'll come back to you for another question. Any other questions on the difference between Sharia law and Islamic law?
What about the bombing of Germany?
Sorry.
That's what happens under Islamic law.
Okay.
German children alive.
Right, ladies and gentlemen. Wait. Right. Let me give you an example of something that happens under Islamic law. This is what the BBC never tells you. More than 200 Christians have been massacred, butchered, murdered in Yalawata Market Square near Makurdi in Benue State. In the brutal attack, Christian families who previously fled violent persecution, so they were already refugees, were targeted again by Islamic militants who, as they slain women, children, old, young, abled, disabled, cried out, Allahu Akbar, as they slew Christians. And the lying BBC never told you about it, because the lying BBC only care about Gaza. I say, forget Gaza. Let's talk about what's happening to Christians in Nigeria. Forget Gaza. Let's talk about what's happening to Christians in Sudan. Forget Gaza. Let's talk about what's happening to Christians in Syria. Forget refugees in Gaza. Let's talk about the refugees from northern Cyprus and Artsakh, Armenia. Every one of you who is a Christian has a duty to challenge the liberal narrative and shove the persecuted church down their throat, ladies and gentlemen. And this violent jihad, ladies and gentlemen, is justified in Islamic fiqh. So let me just read to you the relevant passage. Because this is what our stupid, ignorant, liberal fools in government do not understand. This is called the Book of the Reliance of the Traveller. It is a book of Islamic fiqh of the school of Shafi, which is one of the 4 classical books of Islamic fiqh. It is a madhab. Let me just read the relevant section on jihad. And I want all of you liberal politicians and all of you progressive bourgeoisie who don't know a damn about what you are talking about to listen carefully. There you go. That's what I'm reading. That's what I'm reading. And if any Muslim wants to stand next to me to make sure that I'm reading exactly what the text says, they can do so. In section 09, and all I'm going to ask you is, am I reading what it says? Jihad means to war against non-Muslims and is etymologically derived from the word mudhajah, signifying warfare to establish the religion. And it is the lesser jihad. As for the greater jihad, it is a spiritual warfare against the lower self, nafs, which is why the Prophet, Allah bless him and give him peace, said as he was returning from jihad, we have returned from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad. The scriptural basis for jihad, prior to scholarly consensus, is such Quranic verses as fighting is prescribed for you, Quran 2:16, slay them wherever you find them, Quran 4:8-9, fight the idolaters utterly, Quran 9:36, and such hadiths as one related to Bukhari and Muslim that the Prophet of Allah, bless and give him peace, said, I have been commanded to fight the people until they testify that there is no God but Allah, that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and perform the prayer, pay the zakat. If they say it, they have saved their blood and possessions from me, except for the rights of Islam over them, and their final reckoning is with Allah. And the hadith reported by Muslim, to go forth in the morning or evening to fight in the path of Allah is better than the whole world and everything in it. Details concerning jihad are found in the accounts of the military expeditions of the Prophet, Allah bless him and give him peace, including his own martial forays and those on which he dispatched others. The former consist of the ones he personally attended, some 27 others, say 29 of them, he fought in 8 of them and killed only 1 person with his noble hand. Ubay ibn Khalaf, at the Battle of Uhud, on the latter expedition, he sent others to fight himself, remaining at Medina, and these were 47 in number. Have I read accurately?
Yeah.
Have I distorted the words in any way?
Kind of. You've read it accurately,
Oh,
but you
literally, listen. I literally just read the text.
Yeah.
And here's the taqiyya. Even though all I did is read the text, he's saying that I distorted it. Anyone who agrees with him that I distorted it, you can read it for yourself in my hands to see if what you read matches what I read. Let me go on, because I'm answering a question. Right? Now, listen to the next bit, because this is what our idiotic elites do not know. Because this is what is being taught in Islam. Listen, if none of those concerned perform jihad and it does not happen at all, then everyone who is aware that it is obligatory is guilty of sin if there was a possibility of having performed it. That means, ladies and gentlemen, we will never, ever de-radicalize the Islamic community. And the more familiar Muslims become of their teaching, the more radical they become. Now, the liberals refuse to accept that. Let me finish, Siraj. The liberals refuse to accept that because their ideology ignores the books. But do you think that the Muslims ignore the books? No, they don't. And so what we need in this country is a new ideology of government, one that is willing to face Islam for what it is, and is not frightened to engage with Islam for what it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I answer now?
I'll tell you what. Right. Yeah, not this time, but if you want next week, let's organise. Let me explain. Let me explain. The reason why I'm saying no this week is because I promised Siraj a debate last week, and I don't know what time it is or how much time I've got left to deliver on that promise.
Can I just at least respond to the points that you made?
No, but next week, if you want, I'll give you an entire debate to do so.
Okay, but I want the same debate.
Yeah, on this very point, on these very points. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a question to answer the question about Sharia law and Christian law. We need a government that will at least appreciate what Islam is teaching. What we have are a bunch of progressive ideologues that no matter how much evidence you show them, will simply deny the evidence. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what time is it, please? 5:10. Right. I need to go and speak to Siraj, but then I will come back and answer questions. But I'll take your question. This is the last question, ladies and gentlemen.
My question is, what does Islam, how does it identify love? Because Christian love is different.
Yes.
So, do you still support Tommy? If you know God, you know love.
Yes.
So it'd be interesting what Islam.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me pull out this contrast between Islam and Christianity. In the Bible, it says that whilst we were yet sinners, God so loved the world that he sent his only Son, that anyone who believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. In the Quran, Allah says that he does not love the unbeliever. And that is the difference between the God of Islam and the God of Christianity. That is why In Islam, you regularly hear Muslims say to Christians in this park, I hate you for the sake of Allah. And you regularly hear Christians reply, I love you for the sake of Jesus. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the fundamental difference between Islam and Christianity. Islam is filling the world with hate. Hate of the mushrik, hate of the kuffar, hate of the Shia, hate of the Ibadi, hate of the Sufi, hate of the Ahmadiyya, hate of the Christian, hate of the Jew, hate of you who aren't Makkali, hate of you who aren't Salafi, hate of you who aren't Ashari, hate of you who aren't... It fills the world with hate. By contrast, the church is trying to fill the world with love. Love your mother and father. Love your neighbor. Love yourself. Love your enemies. Meet hatred with love. So whilst we, as the church, are trying to heal the world, the religion of demons are trying to tear the world to pieces. You ask yourselves right now, what does this world need more of? More reasons to hate or more reasons to love? If you agree with me that what the world needs is more reasons to love, then you have just found yourself the reason to become a disciple of Jesus Christ and not a disciple of Muhammad. Right, that was the last question, ladies and gentlemen.
Well done, Boxila. Well done. Hey, family.
No worries, peace with you, sister. Peace with you. Here you go, here you go. Soco's not my channel.
Oh, is it?
I'm not supported by Soco.
What am I paying into then?
You're paying into JC's channel, not my channel.
Well,
This,
I've got to pay to
so my channel is Bob of Speaker's Corner, it's right there. Yeah. So if, well, this, I have been saying this to JC. JC, come here, bro. This is, I want to give you an example of why I've been asking you to put up a community post saying clearly that your channel is not my channel. This sister is paying into your channel thinking she's supporting me. Yeah. So please put up a community post making it clear that your channel is not my channel.
Can I have God?
What?
God.
Yeah.
God bless you, Bob.
God bless. Peace with you. Peace with you. How are you, brother?